I would argue that it's incumbent on the people who run the elections in our country to come forward and answer these questions. And why haven't they? Answer it with some credibility. Because I, for one, am sick of walking away from an election, win or lose, and wondering if it was done fairly. Hey, we mentioned this yesterday in passing, but we wanted to explore this a little bit more today because there's been a lot of conversation on social media about, something that's incredibly disconcerting to so many of us. I mean, it appears that upwards to 15 million or more Americans have been abducted. They've been abducted either by aliens. I speculated yesterday it could have been the rapture or something else, but they've just disappeared over the course of the last 4 years. I'm pretty sure they didn't die of COVID. I certainly hope not. I would never want to make light of such things. But let's take a look at this graphic again, just to understand exactly what we're talking about. Now, these are the last 4 presidential elections in the United States, starting all the way to the left with Barack Obama versus Mitt Romney. And you can see there that Barack Obama just got over about 66 million votes, right? Then 4 years later, Hillary Clinton, this is the popular vote, of course, popular vote. Hillary Clinton got about the same, about 6 million votes as Barack Obama did. And then we get to 2020 in the middle of the pandemic. And Joe Biden got, of course, famously 82 million votes, which is, the difference of about 15, 16 million votes. Now, the Republican candidate that year, Donald Trump, also got an extraordinary number of votes. They seem to be missing. Not as many of them are missing, though. So let's just stick with the Joe Biden voters right now, shall we? That would be about 15 million votes that we believe disappeared because when you come back to this presidential election, you can see that Kamala Harris once again returns to form and gets that same sort of 66 million that Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama did. Also, if you look at these two graph numbers combined, you got 2012, you got that 66 million, and then you show Mitt Romney there with about 61 or 62 million. Then you got Donald Trump in 2016, and he increased that number when the Democrat number did not increase up to about 64 million, 63 and a half, 64 million. So, of course, as the population increases, as it does in America, we're also seeing more voters. And so the numbers are growing, which is also kind of weird that we saw this drastic drop all of a sudden this year, where the same number of voters in 2012, 2016, and 2024 all voted for a Democrat. But there's that outlier. There's that outlier, Joe Biden. And when we get to 2024, it's not like they just changed their mind and decided to vote for the Republican because, Donald Trump's kind of on pace. He's increased his numbers, sure. So the question is, what happened to these 15 million people? Did they all decide that after rallying and deciding they wanted to vote in 2020 for Joe Biden, even though 2020 was one of the hardest years to vote in because you either had to vote early or you had to, social distance when you went to vote in person, or I guess, you had the mail-in ballots and stuff and deal with all of that stuff. But for some reason, this time around, everyone decided, I don't care. I don't care about politics. I only cared in 2020. Now, that's weird. Yesterday, we speculated that they were either abducted by aliens or they got taken up to heaven by Jesus in the rapture, or these people suddenly became apathetic about politics where they rallied to vote in 2020, but now they don't care. I mean, what's the dynamic? They loved Joe Biden that much because the Republican nominee is the exact same, right? So you could either think that they loved Joe Biden so much that they came out of the woodwork by the level of 15 million, but then they don't like Kamala Harris, so they're just going to sit it out. Or our last option is that they never actually existed in the first place. The people didn't exist. The ballots certainly existed, but not people. And we're not the only ones looking at this. This has become quite a thing, actually. If you look at these numbers, let me make it bigger. Sorry. Total votes cast, 2,421 million. 2008, big year, Barack Obama. caught fire, built, a huge momentum behind him, and people got excited about making history. That increased by about 8 million. 2012, it went down a bit, about 2 million, 2.5 million. 2016, we're back up around the same level. This is total votes cast, 128 million, which is about the same as it was in 2008. You pop down to 2024, again, slight increase, about 129 million again, which puts us back to the Barack Obama levels. But then it was 4 years ago. 4 years ago, you're looking at total votes cast 155 million. Have we ever seen anything like this before? Is there any possible explanation to that? Are we to believe that that many people wanted to vote in 2020 and only 2020? And then this year they just shrugged and said, forget about it. And by the way, bear in mind, Kamala Harris raised $1 billion, and all you heard about for the last couple of weeks was that Kamala Harris had a ground game. They had a ground game, and they were going to get out the vote. So they have the same kind of voting records that the Republicans have. They know who voted last time around. They know what party affiliation they registered as. Are you telling me that with $1 billion in the bank, Kamala Harris only focusing on 7 states, the same 7 states, by the way, that Joe Biden focused on 4 years ago, that they were that inept, that they were that criminally, this is criminal malpractice in the world of politics, that they were that incompetent that with $1 billion, they couldn't get out that vote? Like 20 million people? That's weird. That is, well, that's a head scratcher. Let's get granular on this, shall we? This is interesting. Somebody posted, going back to 1984 now, focusing on certain number of counties in America known as bellwether counties, right? So the bellwether counties in America are seen as counties that, depending on how they vote, and it could just be a statistical quirk or something, but the way these counties vote, generally speaking, reflect the way the presidential election will go, all right? And these are counties from all across the country: South Carolina, North Dakota, Michigan, Virginia, Ohio, Washington, Indiana. These are not necessarily battleground counties. They just, for a quirk of demographics and statistics, they end up being these bellwethers, where if you look at how those counties vote, they will reflect how the Electoral College goes. So go back to 1984 and you see that Ronald Reagan won every single one of those counties, 100% of them. In 1988, George Herbert Walker Bush won 88% of those counties. 2 of them went for Dukakis, right? You look at 1992, and George Herbert Walker Bush, in his reelection, only won 1 of those counties. Bill Clinton, the eventual president, won 94% of them. 1996, his reelection try, he won 100% of these counties. In 2000, George W. Bush won 100% of those counties, right? Re-election time for George W. Bush, 2004, he won 94% of those counties. He only lost Coos, New Hampshire to John Kerry. 2008, Barack Obama is running for president. You see where we're going here. 94% went for Obama. Only 1 of those counties went for McCain. 2012, Obama's re-election, 100% goes to Barack Obama. 2016, Donald Trump versus Hillary Clinton. Again, 100% of those counties go for the eventual winner, Donald Trump. Then in 2020, Trump is running for re-election. And just like the last re-elections before him, either Clinton's re-election, George W. Bush's re-election, and now his re-election, Donald Trump won every single one of those counties except for 1. And yet that year, the only year since 1984, the winner of these bellwether counties, which was Donald Trump, did not become the eventual winner of the Electoral College. The only one. And then we go to this last election, and you can see 2024, Donald Trump won 88% of the counties. Kamala Harris won only 2 of them, and he was eventually the president. So 2020 is the outlier. It's the only year that Joe Biden ends up being the president, the winner of the Electoral College, by only winning 6% of these bellwether counties. Just 1 of them, just 1 county. And it happened to be in his home state of Delaware. Again, I keep using the same word. Strange. Really, really weird. Super strange. And in fact, I'm not the only one recognizing this. And it's not just randos out there who are taking a look at this. Chan Pavlovitz, who is a political analyst on the left, I believe, he said, how can we have had record turnout and then 20 million fewer votes cast nationally? That's a great question. How did we go from so there's a lot of people who built these models out on how this election was going to go, and they were assuming the turnout would be similar to 4 years ago. They were not taking into account 15 to 20 million fewer votes cast, were they? Pam Keith, who's an Esquire, just said it straight out, 20 million votes are missing. Dinesh D'Souza pointed it out. He's been doing some credible analysis of the 2020 election. Kamala got 60 million votes in 24. Does anyone really believe Biden got 80 million in 2020? Where did those 20 million Democrat voters go? Dinesh believes they never existed. And meanwhile, Roseanne says the funniest thing I'm seeing is Democrats saying the election was rigged because there was a huge turnout last night and there were 20 million less votes for Kamala. They still think Biden got 81 million votes at 4 a.m. Trump's the most popular candidate of all time. He won 3 elections, 2 handily in a row. It's a fair observation. In fact, it's hard not to reach this conclusion, isn't it? In fact, I'm curious as to how anyone is looking at these numbers and not asking this question. In fact, I would argue that it's incumbent on the people who run the elections in our country to come forward and answer these questions. And why haven't they? Answer it with some credibility. Because I, for one, am sick of walking away from an election, win or lose, and wondering if it was done fairly. And I say win or lose because in the last 2 elections, I've been on both the losing side and the winning side. And this bothers me. Even though I'm on the winning side, it bothers me. And we deserve an answer. We deserve to know if our elections were done fair and square. It's the least they can do. Although I did see one hypothesis that makes sense, that may explain all of it. And it has to do with something very different this time around with regard to how the Republicans approached this election. With a brand new Republican National Committee, a brand new focus, and 2 brand new co-chairs, Laura Trump and Mr. Whatley of North Carolina. Mr. Whatley, who is the co-chair, he doesn't get as much attention because his last name's not Trump. But he is, in fact, a lawyer, and he is focused on election abnormalities in his state of North Carolina, and he made it a mandate to come into this election focusing on this. And I think this graphic actually tells us quite a bit. They had 230,000 volunteers at polling places this time around. They had 150 lawsuits that had already been in place before Election Day. In fact, they had already won quite a few of them based on what had been done in some states to try to jerk around with the vote. They had over 6,000 attorneys dedicated to election integrity over the course of the last several months and specifically focused on Election Day. And the Democrats knew it this time along. They knew that they had those lawyers. They knew they had those lawsuits pending. They knew they had all those volunteers. And when you know you're being watched, you tend not to break the law. You know, there's a reason why in convenience stores or at stores in the mall or at jewelry stores, they have security guards and they have cameras watching everything that you do. You know, there's a reason why when you go to the bank, you've got to get past security and all those security cameras because people are watching you. And, you know, when you've got security cameras watching everything you do, you tend not to try to break the law. And it could be just as simple as that. It could be. Or it could be the rapture or alien abduction. What do you think it was? Let us know in the chat. and in the comments. Hey, for those of us who have been holding our breath right up until Tuesday night when we got the results, we can now exhale, right? We can now get to work. We can do something about the major issues this country is facing. And one of the most significant issue is our national debt. The fact is, our nation is broke, and the debt is a house of cards that can't quickly be dismantled. So the strategy remains the same. You got to diversify your savings. So many things are out of control, out of our president's control, too. It's important to have a safe haven for your savings. Birch Gold Group is going to help you convert an IRA or 401k into an IRA in physical gold. And the best news is it doesn't cost you a penny out of pocket. In fact, in a second, I'm going to tell you I can get some extra free money in your pocket from Birch Gold. First, you want to text my name, Larry, Larry. How do I spell this? Larry to 989898. And they're going to send you a free info kit on gold. And then right now, listen to this. Through Black Friday, you're going to receive a free 1-ounce silver eagle for every $5,000 purchased. That's incredible. Diversify your savings with Birch Gold. Text Larry to 989898 and claim your eligibility for free silver today.